Okay, let's unpack this. We are launching into a deep dive. And it's a big one. We're looking at one of the most, important collections of Buddhist source material, the Sayutta Nikaya.
The connected discourses.
Right. And if you really want to get to the core of the teaching, these radical insights into reality, suffering, the path to freedom, this is basically the foundational map.
It is, yeah. But it can be a challenging map to read. This material is just enormous. We're talking thousands of short, pithy sayings and verses, and that can feel, well, a little overwhelming.
For sure.
So our mission today is to give you a clear, structured roadmap. We're going to try and cut through that sheer volume, highlight the crucial organizational principles, and really deliver the wisdom in a way that sticks with you.
And we're starting with the architecture of the text itself, which I find this fascinating. The way these ancient teachings were organized actually gives you a massive head start in understanding the practice.
Absolutely. The compilation itself is a lesson. So the Sayutta Nikaya is organized into 5 major books, or Vagas, and it's done according to 2 pretty unique principles. The first one is really striking. It's the first book, the Sagathavagga.
And that's the one that's categorized purely by literary genre. Yeah.
Exactly. This book collects all the discourses that have verses, or gathas. And in a lot of these, the prose setting around them is, well, it's reduced almost to nothing. Sometimes you just have an exchange of verses between the Buddha and someone else.
And that someone else isn't always human, which I think is so compelling. You get these really intimate conversations with high-ranking celestial beings, these divas, who often visit the Buddha at night.
Yes. But the majority of the collection is organized by the second principle, doctrinal themes. The other 4 books are all thematic. They focus on subjects of, paramount importance.
Like dependent origination.
Right, the causality of suffering. Then you have the 5 aggregates, the 6 sense bases,
That's how we interact with the world.
and the various training factors that lead to liberation.
Okay, and this is where it gets really powerful, because the structure is more than just good indexing. The editors use this literary device called template parallelism.
This is maybe the most critical insight into how the collection functions. It means you see the same formal pattern, the same mold, applied over and over again to different categories, to elements, to aggregates, to the sense bases.
So if a pattern says, the body is impermanent, don't crave it, the template ensures the next text says, feeling is impermanent, don't crave it, and then perception, and so on. Is that the idea?
Precisely. The structure itself is instructional. It is teaching you, the learner, how to treat reality. The template dictates the action. Those building blocks of existence are meant to be understood with wisdom. Defilements are meant to be abandoned, and path factors are to be developed. It's a universal method.
That makes the whole thing feel so much less overwhelming. You master the template for one category, and you suddenly have the roadmap for all of them. But to really get this, we have to deal with some of the Pali vocabulary. Some of these words just carry so much more weight than their English translations.
A necessary step, for sure. Let's take bhava, for example. We might just say existence, but that's far too broad.
Right, I remember the commentary on this. It's not universal existence, like the dishes in my sink exist.
Correct. Bhava specifically means concrete sentient existence, the kind that's in one of the cosmological realms. It's tied directly to the cycle of rebirth, starting at conception and ending at death. It's lived experience fueled by desire.
Which leads to the goal, nibbana. And we often just leave that untranslated because trying to put a label on it seems to miss the point entirely.
It does. The source material defines it by what it is not. It is unborn, unmade, unbecome, and unconditioned. It's the end of defilements, the release from that wheel of bhava, but it's just not available to a mind that's still trapped in conditioned thought.
So, with the architecture and vocabulary in place, we can move into the core doctrine, how suffering actually works. And the Buddha defines that through dependent origination.
Yes, and this is where the Buddha positions the path as the middle way. The teaching of causation deliberately avoids 2 philosophical extremes.
Okay, so the first extreme is eternalism. The idea that the self that acts is the exact same eternal self that experiences the result later on.
Yes, and the second is annihilationism, which is the view that the person who acts is just gone at death. So the one who experiences any result is completely separate or maybe doesn't even exist.
And the middle path that the Tathagata teaches is dependent origination. This whole mass of suffering arises from ignorance, which conditions our actions, which conditions consciousness, and on and on. And the key is, the suffering stops when the ignorance stops. It's a process.
It's a process, not a state of being or non-being. And the objective basis of that suffering, the thing we keep latching onto, are the 5 aggregates.
Form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness.
Right. But before we get into the danger of clinging, we need to clarify one last term, Sakkaya. Literally the existing body, but the source translates it as identity.
Okay, so the 5 aggregates together are the basis for our clinging.
They're the objective ground, the false idea that there's some permanent me inside these constantly changing parts. That's identity view. The aggregates are where that idea finds its footing.
It's so powerful that the texts insist we see these aggregates not just as changing, but as totally void, hollow, and insubstantial. And the similes for this are, they're incredibly visceral.
They're meant to shatter any illusion of solidity. The physical body, or form, is compared to a lump of foam on a river. I mean, think about that. You try to grab it and it just dissolves. Where's the substance?
There is none. And perception is compared to a shimmering mirage you see on a hot day. You think you see water, you run towards it, and it's gone.
And the texts don't stop there. All of these things, the foam, the feeling, the mirage, the entire basis of our identity, are described not just as impermanent and selfless, but as murderous.
That is a startling choice of words. Why murderous? If they're the basis of our identity, how could they be destructive?
Because the very act of clinging to them, of identifying with that foam or that mirage, that is the act that guarantees you continue in suffering. It leads directly to more birth and death. So in that context, anything that locks you in the cycle is effectively trying to murder your chance at freedom.
Which brings us to that famous simile, the image of the dog on a leash.
It's the perfect illustration of repetition without any progress. The uninstructed worldling just revolves endlessly around these 5 aggregates, falsely thinking, this is me, this is mine.
Just like a dog tied to a post with a leash.
Exactly. The dog keeps running, using up energy, but it never gets any further from the post it's tied to. And because the worldling keeps revolving around these aggregates, they're not freed from birth, aging, death, not freed from suffering. The effort is just wasted.
That image leads us straight into the danger of the sense realm. If the aggregates are the post, then what are the things that keep pulling us around it?
Well, that brings us to Mara, the evil one. The 6 sense basis sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touch, and thoughts are described as Mara's active tools. They are the 6 hooks cast out for the calamity and slaughter of beings.
So it's the constant seeking of delight in these things that binds us.
Right. If a practitioner delights in these enticing objects, welcomes them, holds on to them. The text says they have swallowed Mara's hook. The evil one has got them. This is why the warnings against sensual pleasures are so strong.
The imagery is really uncompromising. Sensual pleasures are compared to a charcoal pit, deeper than a man's height, just filled with glowing coals.
And the details are key. No flame, no smoke. It's just this pit of pure, deadly heat. The warning is stark. If a man who wants to live is dragged towards this pit, he would instinctively wriggle away with all his might. That should be our view of sensual pleasures, of visceral rejection.
But, practically speaking, we can't just go live in a cave. We're constantly around pleasing and agreeable things.
True. And the text addresses this. It says anything in the world that has a pleasing and agreeable nature is called a thorn in the noble one's discipline. So navigating life is like walking through a huge, thorny forest.
You can't just run away from the forest.
No, but you can move through it with absolute care, with constant mindful restraint to avoid getting pricked.
This level of careful, detached seeing, it brings us to that really famous distinction, the image of the 2 darts. This is where the doctrine becomes so immediately applicable.
Yes, it determines the nature of your suffering right now. When the uninstructed worldling is struck by a painful bodily feeling, a headache, an injury, anything, they compound it. They immediately feel a second mental feeling.
Sorrow, grief, despair.
Exactly. That's the second dart. They get struck by the physical pain, and then they immediately strike themselves with the mental dart of aversion to that pain. They are, as the text says, attached to suffering.
But the noble disciple is different.
Totally different. When struck by that same painful bodily feeling, they feel only one feeling, the bodily one, not a mental one. They harbor no aversion towards the pain and just feel it, detached.
They accept the unavoidable physical fact of the first dart, but refuse to let the mind create the second dart of anguish.
Yes. And by not compounding the suffering, they are detached from all that sorrow and despair. This is the practical application of nibbindati, that term we mentioned earlier. It's often translated as revulsion.
And we clarified this is not about emotional disgust.
Not at all. This revulsion, nibbindati, is a calm inward turning away from conditioned existence. It comes from wisdom, from seeing the five aggregates as they are: void, hollow, insubstantial. That clear seeing is what lets you avoid grasping the second dart.
So that brings us back to the dialogues in the SN, which often apply these profound insights to everyday conduct. Where do we find the most direct advice?
Well, that first book, the one with all the verses, is filled with these incredible, concise interactions. A lot of them are with the devas, the high-ranking deities. They visit the Buddha, often confused or looking for clarification.
The one about the impermanence of heavenly bliss is fantastic. A devata is just going on and on about the glory of Nandana, the home of the devas.
And another devata just shuts him down, basically calls him a fool and says, "Don't you know that maxim of the enlightened ones? Impermanent are all formations. Their nature is to arise and vanish. Their appeasement is blissful."
That's a profound correction. Even the highest, most blissful heavenly realms are still formations. They're still conditioned, still going to end. You can't even cling to heavenly bliss.
And in another one, the devas are arguing over what's the best of various things: the best seed, the best rain, the best sun. And the Buddha comes in with a spiritual correction.
He totally reframes the definition of best, right? Shifts it from the material world to the path.
Completely. He concludes that knowledge is the best of things that rise up, while ignorance excels among things that fall down. The community of practitioners, the Sangha, is the best of things that go forth. And the most excellent of all speakers is the Buddha. He just flips the whole value system.
We also get really grounded advice from the interactions with King Pasenadi of Kosala. The king has this incredible moment of self-reflection.
He does. He realizes that if he engages in misconduct of body, speech, or mind, he's actually treating himself like an enemy. Even if he says he loves himself, he's doing to himself what a foe would do to him.
And conversely, if you act rightly, with good conduct, you're treating yourself as dear. And the Buddha, he doesn't lecture, he just confirms it. So it is, great king, so it is. It's this fundamental principle. Your actions define your real relationship with your own well-being.
And underneath all of this, there's one quality that's non-negotiable: diligence. The wise person guards diligence as their foremost treasure. Only the diligent person secures the good in this life and the good in the next.
The entire path really boils down to a single essential vision, doesn't it? When the Buddha says, "One who sees the Dhamma sees me. One who sees me sees the Dhamma."
That statement confirms it all. It's about insight. Physical closeness to a teacher is irrelevant compared to actually penetrating the teaching itself. The teaching is the realization.
So we've walked through the elegant instructional structure of the connected discourses. We've clarified some really challenging vocabulary and used these striking images, the dog on the leash, the two darts, the charcoal pit, to crystallize the central teaching, that clinging to the five aggregates is the cause of all our suffering.
And the core takeaway, really, is that liberation doesn't come from just knowing a list of doctrines. It comes from realizing that the very basis of our identity is void, hollow, and insubstantial. This profound wisdom is what allows for nibbindati, that calm inward turning away, which leads directly to dispassion.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner, as you take this forward? The path requires cultivating this profound non-emotional revulsion towards conditioned existence. That's what leads to the ideal state of the arahant, who has quenched all defilements.
And if all formations, even the most blissful heavens, are impermanent, their nature is to arise and vanish. The challenge for you to consider is the relationship between what you know and what you feel. Can we ever truly feel that revulsion for something without first being fully convinced deep in our bones of its imminent end and its underlying suffering? The turning away only happens when the seeing is complete.